Hi guys! So today I'm going to cover our entire book in 10 minutes. I'm going to cover all of the Noah's Ark story elements that I saw across the different stories and explain why they're important. So here we go. First, we're going to cover the Noah element, the Noah figure in the different stories. And one thing I noticed with all these different Noah figures is, well, two things. One, we have two female Noah figures. We have Kath and Miss Ferguson. And it's really interesting to think about, a woman being the Noah figure, right? The woman is the main character. The woman has the authority. The woman is the one in charge. It's very progressive of our author to do that. We also have another outlier, Shipwreck. No Noah figure. I mean, at least there's no main character, no named character. And I didn't say the narrator for this one like I did for the Dream because there's just one narrator the whole time. But in Shipwreck, I mean, I guess there's one narrator, but because it's split in two, it's really two stories and could be two narrators, so it's a bit complex. But I didn't really see a main character there. And I guess one thing we could get from that is that, maybe a main character isn't always necessary, to make a story engaging. Yeah, it's interesting thought. Anyway, so those are the Noah figures I saw. And, besides those outliers, everybody else were definitely men, men in charge of, their respective things. So anyway, those are the Noah figures. Next, we have the arks. So the ark, is more than just a boat. Like, a lot of these actually are boats and boat-related things. Like, a lot of them. There we go. A lot of them are boats. But if we look closely, we'll see that not all of them are boats. In fact, here we are. There's 4 of them that are not. And you're probably thinking, like, how can it be an ark if it doesn't even remotely resemble a boat? Well, an ark, the definition of the ark can actually be expanded to include, things that are like an ark, using the ark as a metaphor. So instead of always looking for a literal ark or a boat, we can also look for things that act like an ark. And what do arks do? They keep you safe from the storm, right? They keep you safe from the flood. So in the mountain, Miss Ferguson's beliefs keep her safe, right? They insulate her. They help her understand the world. And by the end of the story, she's lost her belief, and that's why she chooses to die in that cave. In 3 Simple Stories, we have the whale, and it's interesting to think of a living ark, like an actual animal, as the ark. And the ark does technically keep Jonah safe. So that's his ark. Then in Project Ararat, Spike Tigler's faith, believing that God sent him to Mount Ararat. That's what keeps him going, even to the very end of the story. And then in the Dream, I put breakfast, and I know that's a weird one, but his breakfast is what grounds him. It's what helps him make sense of this weird heaven place that he's in. So anyway, those are the different arcs that I saw. And I guess what we get out of that is that, we all have different things that are our arcs, right? Different things that sustain us and keep us grounded and help us, weather different storms in our lives. So it's interesting to think about how those arcs can be different across different things. Next, we have the animals. And except for the stowaway and the survivor, those are the ones with real animals, the rest of the stories all had people as animals. And I think the significance of that is that we see people who are disempowered in pretty much all these stories, people who are being treated like animals. And that's terrible. And I think maybe our author is linking animals to people and people to animals to help us see, that we really are connected, that we don't want to treat animals poorly because it's like treating ourselves poorly. At least that's my interpretation. Feel free to have totally different ones than I have. But anyway, that's what I got out of the animal analysis. So let's go ahead and go to flood. So the flood, it could be a literal flood, but besides the first story, I didn't see any literal floods. What I saw were disasters, really bad things that happened that kind of set the story in motion. So that's how a flood functions across all these different stories. So, we have floods, well, as I was looking at these, I noticed that some of the floods are caused by people, like the terrorists, Chernobyl, the ships leaving, see the Titanic, people not being saved, Matt being killed. And yeah, I would say those are the ones that are caused by people, different bad things that people caused. Whereas the other ones, let me go back here. So the other ones, which would be the shipwreck, the avalanche, the whale, and not finding the ark, and heaven getting boring, those are not people caused. Those are just crazy things that happen, And so maybe the point here is that, the bad things that happen in our lives, sometimes they are caused by people, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're like freak accidents, like a shipwreck. And what's cool though is that through all these different things, at least one character always survives, right? The human race, we're really resilient. We really push through all kinds of crazy things. So that's what I got out of that. And for the God figure, the God element in these stories, I noticed that, God appears, like as God in 3 of the stories, but the rest of them, God appears as something else, either as a person. So we have that one, that one, that one. Yeah, I'd count that as people, and people. So, the ark, sorry, not the ark. So, God can kind of appear as a person sometimes in these stories. And I don't mean that the person necessarily acts like God, because I don't think God acts like a terrorist myself. But, all these different people have a lot of power in their different stories, right? Each person has so much power. The terrorists have total control of the situation, until the very end. The doctor in Cass' dreams, has her all, like chained up to the bed. The mutineers have the swords and the guns and the weapons. In the 3rd story, of the 3 simple stories, the different countries, aren't letting these refugees in, so they have all the power. Pippa has all the power in Upstream, which is really interesting because she's not even like talking to Charlie. Like he's just obsessed, with communicating with her and the fact that she's not responding. And then finally the judge in the dream, his basically him saying that, Charlie, or sorry, not Charlie, basically him saying that the narrator is, just okay, like that really gets to him, right? It's like, what do you mean I'm just okay? So the power of words, the power of, judging someone, so you see a lot of, humans acting as God in these different stories. And then finally we see some non-human elements. We have the mind in a couple of stories. And we also have the whale, an animal, and we have the ark. So, and I put the ark because it's really the idea of the ark that kind of keeps Spike going. Like he's so obsessed with finding this thing. And it has power over him, right? And Kat's mind has power over her. Beasley's mind has power over him. It makes him want to recreate the Titanic disaster, except with him dying this time instead of not. And then the whale, of course, has the power to, swallow Jonah or keep him alive. So anyway, those are the different, God figures I saw. I think the most interesting thing about the God figure idea is that, things besides God can have a lot of power in our lives, especially people, for better or worse. And then finally, for the rescue, most of these were people saving other people, which is great. We also had, like events that sort of signaled something new happening, right? We have the kittens being born, which provides hope. We have the launch of the 2nd mission, which is again hope. And finally, the narrator wakes up in the dream, and we don't know if he's, really awake or if he's just starting the cycle all over again, but it is, it's a step towards something. It's a new beginning, essentially. So anyway, those are the different elements. And I guess the point of the rescue element for me is just to think about, there's always some way out. Like, even if not everyone makes it out, people still survive. People can help each other survive. And so, anyway, that's what I got out of the rescue element. And that is the entire chart. Happy last week. Bye, guys.